Hiya, welcome to Zoe's Kitchen again. This is my intro to the topic of statics or static equilibrium. And I'm really going to focus on one type of problem in this video, which is ladder problems. This video is just going to be about how to draw your diagram, what's going on in these problems, and I'll do a run through at some point. So my basic diagram here, I've got a ladder leaning up against a wall and its foot on the ground, and I'm just going to go through how we put all the forces on this depending on what we've been given in the question. So static equilibrium we already know means no resultant force. Newton's first law tells us that it would then have a constant velocity and either still or be just, for example, barreling through space at a constant velocity. It also means no resultant moment, so no turning effect. So the thing is not spinning either. Not moving, no, it's not spinning. So static really just means it's still, it's not moving, so it's not got a velocity apart from that it's something happening on the earth, and so inevitably we don't know if we're still or not. Anyway, let's not get meta. Something that is still, and these two facts here are what we use in the questions. If we're given that something equilibrium, particularly if it's in limiting equilibrium, we get a bit more information about friction, but we can say that these are in balance, and we can work out what's going on. So here's our ladder. If we look at, I haven't got an actual ladder, otherwise we could have fun in the garden with that, but I've got my trusty ruler that we were using the other day. If I balance that up against the side of my computer there, you can see it's quite happy to stay there, and although it's got its weight to look after, it's not a very heavy object, and it's quite happy to just sit there. That's not always the case though. If I take it to kind of lower angle, it starts to feel a little bit uncertain, and then past a certain point it just collapses. So this is what we're talking about with ladders. Notice what's happening is that the angle is getting smaller between the ground and the ruler, so the angle in here, and as it gets smaller, what the ruler wants to do is slide away from the wall, and the top end falls down and the bottom end falls outwards. Let's switch that one more time. So what's holding it before in equilibrium? Well, it's really just friction that's going on. That time the wall moved out of the way. If the wall moves out of the way, of course the ruler's going to fall down that way. So there's a couple of other forces going on apart from its weight that are keeping it in equilibrium. So, like I say, this first part we're just going to look at labelling up. Go for a really big diagram, as big as you can, so that you've got lots of space to mark all the forces on. Now, the main force that we can start with any object is every ladder will have weight. You can get light, inextensible strings and things like that, but a ladder will pretty much always have some sort of weight. Now, you might be given its mass, of course, so you might be given its weight as W, or you might be given its mass in kilos, so it might be mg, mass times g for that. I'm just going to put W there for its weight. Okay, you may well be given the length of the ladder, things like that as well. You may well be given the angle, or you might be trying to find what is the angle to have your ladder at. So this is not the only force on our system, because if it were, the ladder would be falling. And we're saying, well, it's in equilibrium, so something's keeping it there. One thing that is stopping it from just completely friction of the ground. So if I call this point A at the ground, point B up here, arbitrary letters, then we've got a reaction at A. And notice it comes up perpendicular to the ground, not to the ladder, perpendicular to the ground, the surface that is providing that force. So that's counteracting our weight. There's also a reaction going to happen at B. And again, B is really just concerned, this wall is just concerned with not letting the ladder fall into it. So the force at B, again, it's going to be perpendicular to the wall. So we've got a reaction at B. And this seems like an awful lot of unknowns, but you'll see they do work themselves out quite easily. So these are the reactions. And this, although these two might be in balance, actually this one looks like it's going to push the ladder away from the wall. So there's something that balances that one out. The other force and the main thing that keeps the ladder from slipping is the non-slippy thing, friction. So we've got reactions, perpendicular to the surface, and we've also got friction. Now, depending on the question, you might have a smooth ground and a rough wall, or a smooth wall and rough ground. So read your question carefully. You may have rough ground and rough wall with a different coefficient of friction. So you might have a different amount of roughness on the two surfaces. But what that does is gives us a frictional force, and they always operate parallel to the surface because you're stopping the object being dragged along it. So we do need to think about the real world thing, behaviour of this, to work out which direction it's going to work in. So I'm going to take you back to my ruler. Oh, it's still there. So if it were to slip, notice the bottom end is moving away from the wall. Okay, so although we've got kind of reflection here, the bottom end moves away from the wall. And the top end is trying to move down the wall. So if everything was perfectly slippery, that's what would happen. So we need to imagine that when we're looking at our diagram as well. And what would be happening at the bottom end? Well, it would be trying to move, trying to go that way, trying to slip away from the wall. And that means the friction is resisting that. It's not helping it pull away from the wall, it's resisting it. So it's going in the opposite direction. So we've got friction at A would be working that way if there's friction there. At the top of the ladder, which way is it trying to move? Well, it's trying to move, put in another little arrow. It's trying to move downwards, the top of the ladder at B. So which way is the friction going to act? Is it going to work that way as well? No, it's going to be resisting that act. So look at all these forces that are actually going on there. We've got reactions and friction at both the contact points, which are all working against that weight and against the ladder falling down, or making it fall down. So when we come to sorting out these questions, go back to what equilibrium means. No resultant force, no resultant moment. And our next step will be we can resolve. And we can do that horizontally and we can do that vertically. And this is just balancing out the forces. What's nice about resolving here is that although the ladder is at an angle, all the forces are either horizontal or vertical. So if we look at all the horizontal ones, we've got RB and FA. So that's all we've got. So RB is equal to FA. in this simple system. Sometimes there's another force applied, so somebody's trying to keep the ladder in place with another force, but that's all we've got here. We've just got FA and RB, and vertically we've got a little bit more going on. We've got the weight acting downwards, and the weight is balanced out by the reaction at A and also this friction here, so RA plus B. So we can give you lots of results. Then when we come to take moments, in general you want to eliminate unknowns, so you can eliminate any force that's acting on the point that you're looking at. So obviously if you work with A, if you take moments about A, you're going to eliminate RA and FA, and maybe you can work out these in terms of W. You'll be given some numbers for these, or you can take moments about B. So they're our most common choices. So choose wisely to eliminate forces, but don't eliminate the one you want to find. Okay, that's it for the general case. I'll give you a worked example a little bit later. All the best. Bye.